media perspective. So there's actually a lot more stories than there were, say, 10 years ago. And so there's some amazing documentaries to take a look at. One of them is called The Dark Side of Chocolate. So you can read about the Ivory Coast, and 90% of the chocolate that comes into the country is slave labor. You can look at Nefarious, which is a very...
Gosh darn, hello Steve.
Hey Steve.
How the heck are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. I see you brought a friend today.
We have a friend here. This gentleman's name is... Wait, do you want your name put out to millions of people?
I guess I'd be all right.
Is that all right?
That's all right.
We have the Jonathan Overby is with us tonight on the Steve and Steve show. First and foremost, right? You guys, thank you so much for showing up here. Is this a beautiful evening or what? You know that it's not going to go that long because it's going to get dark, so we're going to have to shut it down. We can't just keep talking like we normally do, right? But what are some of the things we got to say they got to do?
Well, I think we need to discuss.
Look at this.
I picked up a Rioja.
A Rioja, Spanish wine.
From Spain.
Wow. You know why? Because today is a feast day, the Feast of the Transfiguration.
Yep.
So cheers.
And
For those of you that don't know, go look it up.
Jonathan's drinking some sort of oil.
A delicious stout that he loves. Will you drink that and show them how much you love that?
Mm-hmm. Goes down good. It's liquid courage.
Well, thank you for subscribing, right? I mean, we really appreciate you doing that. And those of you that haven't, please do. Tell all your friends and family about this. We need to know. Today, we have probably one of the most, if not the most, in fact, I'm going to go out on a limb. This is the most interesting episode we've ever done.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
So, and if you hit subscribe, we'll invest in microphones.
Yeah, you know what? That's right. If we get, all right, we're going to do this. If we get 5 subscribers, we're buying microphones for the next time after we know that we got 5 subscribers.
Yeah.
So get out there, tell your friends, get 5 subscribers for us, and you get microphones. Because right now we're just yelling.
That's right. So Steve and Jonathan, on the topic that we have, I was actually surprised by a stat that I had heard, and maybe Jonathan, you can kind of help us understand that a little bit. But I had read that
we don't know what the topic is.
We don't.
Yet. Oh, gotcha.
We don't. I haven't
This is
studied
like,
yet,
oh
so.
dear, I like it.
But I had heard that over 800,000 children go missing in the United States alone every year. Is that true, real, or is it off by some number?
That sounds about right.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So what we are talking about tonight is raw still, but very, very serious. Human trafficking. 800,000 kids a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
in the United
States.
United States. This is a sickness, people, that we need to rise up and do something about. Jonathan Overby has got a lot of information about this. So, well, there's the first question, right? How, and I guess the next one is, how does this happen?
So, let me give you a little bit, let's do some backstory.
Let's do some backstory.
Let's do a little backstory. So, for me personally, been involved in anti-trafficking since about 2011. It's almost 10 years. Met my wife in the ministry.
Fantastic.
The two of us decided, actually we met at kind of a local event for volunteers, which we were.
We're going to need a more attuned quality to your voice, and you're going to need to project when you speak, okay? Our audience is very interested in this.
Excellent. Okay.
He's an actor.
Well, that remains to be seen. You can vote by clapping or not, or subscribing, I guess, would be the vote. So, been in the ministry for 10 years, and it's a horrific ministry, if you will. but it's necessary. And so my wife and I decided to undertake this. And our ventures have been widespread throughout the country. We started out with a group called Not For Sale, which is kind of a platform that plugs in other groups, other NGOs, which are non-government organizations that are combating this already. And so our first kind of tour of duty, if you will, was to understand what it is and what you can do about it, right? So really, that's kind of my personal history. There's a lot that goes back to that, but I just wanted to read for you really quickly a definition of human trafficking as it's put forth by the UN. So luckily, we do actually have a pretty strong emphasis on anti-human trafficking efforts around the world. So it's not just America, which is great. So the UN defines it this way. I'm just going to read it for you. It's the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by improper means, either force, abduction, fraud, coercion, for improper purpose, including forced labor or sexual exploitation. So if you were going to kind of boil that down into a sentence, you might say that slavery still exists today.
Without a doubt.
And it exists in the workforce, and it exists from a very deviant sexual exploitation of both adults and, unfortunately, children.
Sexual predators, correct?
That is correct. There's kind of two sides to this coin, if you will. So there's most victims are actually not children. So there's 40 million slaves worldwide today.
Wow.
40 million.
Which is more than any other time in history. So think back to any time that you can think of when slavery was legal in any country that you can think of, and there are more today, now that it's illegal in almost every country,
than any other time in the world.
In history. So we have some of the statistics are 1 in 4 children in the world is slave
exploited in some form or fashion.
That's right.
So if you think about what's the population of Colorado? 5 million, 6 million?
About, somewhere in there.
So let's call it 5, make it math easy.
Yeah.
40 million, right?
Times.
8 times. 8 Colorados.
8 states of Colorado.
Now, it's worldwide, of course.
Worldwide.
Right,
Yeah.
worldwide.
Or another way
Staggering
to
number.
More than 10% of the United States population.
Frankly, more than any one city, right? More than any of the biggest city in the world. I think Mexico City,
New York City
was
is like
30
5
million at one point. Bigger than any of the largest cities in the world is this group of people.
Yeah. So on the one hand, it's I think people who are hearing this for the first time are shell shocked by that. There's a large number in the United States. We kind of think of it, when you hear of it, you might have this image in your head of a non-U.S. citizen somewhere, but this is happening here as well as abroad, unfortunately. And here we are in the great state of Colorado. Denver's one of the hubs.
I want to stop you for just a second, Jonathan, because you told me something some time ago about an event that is near and dear to many people in the state of Colorado for a long time. In January it happens, and a lot of us go to it, and it's called the National Stock Show.
Which is the largest one in the nation.
The largest stock show in the
here
United
Colorado.
States. And what did you tell me about this in terms of sexual exploitation and human trafficking?
So the subtext here is that human trafficking, I think, is primarily greed-based. It is a very, very lucrative industry. It's $150 billion a year.
A lot of money.
Which now surpasses pornography, drugs. So you think about some of the big ones, it's right up there. In fact, it's leading the pack. So you have, what do you sell at big events? So you have big events like the stock show, a lot of football games, baseball games,
Super Bowl, right?
The Super Bowl is a massive event. The World Cup a couple years ago. So unfortunately, what we find during this event is you have a perfect storm of buyers, because you have a lot of people in one town. Typically, they have a lot of money. They have some time on their hand. They're wanting to have a quote-unquote good time. And so it's become all too easy in the United States to order up whatever your flavor is of the month, brown, yellow, whatever, blue-eyed, this, that, and the other. And there's a bunch of ways, unfortunately, that you can get this.
And they're using technology.
They're using
well,
technology.
Right?
You think of things like Craigslist.
So it's not, but it's not. It's not like a volunteer prostitute.
No.
These are actually people that are being
Enslaved,
forced,
right?
enslaved into this work.
Yes, and in many cases they're minors. So either way, it would
Minors
be illegal.
like below 18 years old.
Right.
Children.
Yes.
Children.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in a lot of places, average ages tend to be around 12, 13.
Really?
Yeah, so what is the profile? Give us a little bit about the profile of the victim in this.
Yeah, so it's such a pervasive issue that you have. It's really hard to profile because you can come from all walks of life. There are, of course, some categories that you put people into that make them more susceptible. So lower economic status, of course, is probably number one. We find that lower education tends to be. Any sort of domestic kind of upheaval at home can put people more at risk. So you have, in fact, one of the statistics that I think is staggering is that runaway children in the United States. So you mentioned that stat at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
800,000 kids go missing. Now, not all of them are trafficked, of course. In fact, most of those kids are found and they're returned to their parents. A lot of that has to do with divorce disputes, if you will, and so somebody files them as missing and it's mom that took them, or so on and so forth. But one of the statistics for runaway children is that they will be approached by a trafficker within 24 hours
Of running away.
Wow. And so
they are the traffickers, which I'm just going to call pimp, scumbag, pedophile, whatever they are. These guys or girls are dialed into some kind of a network that says, we know this person has run away and they're a target.
It's an excessively sinister business, obviously, but it's, as you dig, you get to see kind of the depth of human depravity at its worst, if you will. We have, unfortunately, it's really hard to profile perpetrators as well. So there's kind of two camps.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the camps is called, maybe unfortunately, the Johns, because it's a generic term. And those would be folks who are buying the services. Now, and then on the other camp, you have what we would call traffickers. So perpetrators, pimps would fall into that category. And there's hierarchy here. So you can have large networks. So for instance, at the stock show that you mentioned, you can have girls shipped in from India if you want to. So
if you've got the money.
Yeah, that designates a very coordinated business structure
With
effort.
Logistics, everything.
I mean, you gotta pay off customs agents, you have to buy
$150
tickets.
billion in business could get you a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So, of those two, when we talk about the perpetrator side, so the people who are actually providing this service, there's hierarchy there, and one of the lower rung, if you will, members of this would be those. It actually tends to be more women than men who befriend runaways, and we kind of call them. Well, there's a bunch of different names for them, but their basic function is to identify somebody who is at risk. So it doesn't have to be a kid, but a lot of times they're kids, and then get in good graces with that person. So you could do that by conversation. You could do that by buying gifts, this, that, or the other. You could do that by enlisting the help of regular people and saying, hey, if you let me know about somebody in your neighborhood who you know that might be having some trouble, I'd love the tip, and I'll pay you off for the tip, and then I'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
And when we talk about this neighborhood, we're talking international, so it could be in Calcutta, or it could be in Vietnam or Thailand, or I'm not just naming countries. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be anywhere around the
Or
world.
3rd Street in Longmont.
Where they're
Yeah.
looking for money, actually. Somebody may be looking for a little bit of extra money, and so they're willing to give this tip, let's say.
Yeah, and so every country
But
struggles
it happens in
with.
the U.S. I mean,
Yeah,
big
yeah.
time.
It does. It does happen here, unfortunately. Our flavor of it, let's say, is slightly different than other countries, of course, because we struggle with different things. Economics tends to be more of an issue. In India, for instance, which has huge problems. Russia is another really big one, Eastern Russia, which is any places that are economically devastated. And you have generations of people growing up without futures and
Latin America.
absolutely
Oh, yeah.
anything like that. So there's just, unfortunately, there's
Africa.
so many creative ways
Yeah.
that these jerks have come up with to identify and then pounce on disenfranchised peoples. So you could offer them a job. Hey, look, I got this great job modeling in this city that's far away. Let me take you to, and I promise. Oh, and unfortunately, one of the perhaps saddest pieces of this is when they just pay money to the parents and buy the children outright. And so you have a ton
And the parents know that this is happening.
Yeah, they're actually, that's right. They're getting, in fact, we've had some stories of kids who escape and go back and are resold. So in fact, I won't name the country, but one of the slogans there is, or the hope is to have daughters, because then your financial future is secured, because you're going to sell them to a local brothel.
I don't. You say you don't want to name the country, but I'll tell you what. This depravity is beyond the mind to encompass. There's nothing here that should be safe. Tell us the country.
Well, there's an operation going on right now, so I won't
leave that.
endanger
Right.
some of that. But it really brings out the most sinful part of our nature, I think, and one of the maybe positives about being in this ministry, which is fairly horrendous, is that it typically enjoys widespread support. I haven't heard of anybody yet who says, trafficking, that's not a thing.
Not a big
or,
deal.
Yeah, or you shouldn't be doing that legislation to
Right.
help save those girls, right? Like, at least the shaming would be a part of it.
Okay.
And so I
there's
have...
there's some wind there.
There's
behind
some-
the sails that you could get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people seem to
Is there a
universally
survivor network?
recognize.
they understand the whole concept of slavery, right?
And exploitation
Yeah.
and murder
Well,
in many cases.
So here's this is fairly new to me, and I became more aware of it mainly because I was traveling a lot.
Sure.
So I see these signs in the airport saying "Report human trafficking."
Yes.
There's a huge campaign, and I'm looking at these signs going, "Why is that here?
Yeah.
In this airport?
In the
Denver
United
airport,
States.
in the United States,
Right.
Chicago," and I just things like, wow, how often does that really happen, right?
Yeah.
And then I go hear the statistics of the missing children, and now with some of the stuff I'm seeing on Twitter and some of the protests of Save the Children that's happening,
Yeah.
I'm just blown away that this isn't a bigger
Front page news,
that
right?
this isn't something we talk about every year. I mean, it's huge.
I agree. It's the ability for our adversary to keep this in the shadows is one of the most harmful things. Great line.
We're going to just call because this is what I do.
Do it.
We're just going to call our adversary out. It's Satan. It's the SOB named Satan. Go ahead.
A big film guy, right? And so one of my favorite lines in film is the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world he didn't exist.
Absolutely.
And that's what's going on with human trafficking. Yeah. Oh, it's not a thing. Don't
It's
worry
not that
about it.
big of a
There's
deal.
it's these poor brown kids or whoever in some other place. It's not your spot. And unfortunately, that we should care about that too. But it's pretty prevalent. It's happening in our backyard. And in fact, Denver's one of the hubs because if you think about, so we've talked a little bit about the perpetrators, right? There's this kind of hierarchical structure. So you have those folks kind of on the ground floor they're called recruits. They're literally seeking out disenfranchised kids and then or adults. It's not all sexual trafficking. In fact, most of those 40 million slaves we mentioned are not sex slaves. So we have indentured servitude. We have folks on fishing boats in different parts of the country who are
This is
yanked.
work.
This is work. So they're working in brick factories. They're 16 hours a day, one meal, that kind of thing.
Got no choice. They're slaves.
They're slaves.
They are
They're little slaves. There's physical abuse. There's coercion. You name it. So you have kind of that
bring
front
the
level
margins down, right? Bring the margins down in the business.
Right.
Any corporation out there that's using any of this crap, I mean, this gets me like pissed off. Hershey chocolate. Don't eat freaking Hershey chocolate anymore. Ghirardelli. Don't eat their damn chocolate anymore. What is that chocolate that you let's
Tony's
pitch that.
Chocolonely.
Tony's Chocolonely, and these guys are completely trafficking free. Go Google them, all right? We probably better start to wrap this. This is honestly so important for all of us to do. Is there a survivor network out there?
There is, and so here's a couple things you can do. Okay, so it's a horrendous thing.
What can we do?
But there's hope, guys. Okay, so first of all, there's a lot of good people doing good things. So International Justice Mission, IJM. If you don't know anything about human trafficking, start there. Go to the website.
IJM. What's the website?
IJM.org.
IJM.org.
There's two other ones that are fantastic. It's called Polaris Project.
Polaris Project.
The Polaris Project. Look them up. They're the ones who have a lot of these statistics that you can look up. And then there's a state website as well, and I can't remember.
Joy? Is that? No.
Joy International is a local company, or a local group, and they're wonderful, but they're local here in Colorado. Much smaller. International Justice Mission is in hundreds of countries, and they're doing some amazing work. So if you just want some statistics and some information about what's going on, I think the first thing people can do is just educate ourselves. What is the problem? How can I identify the problem? There's a lot of courses out here that people can take. There's an education piece to this. There's a component for yourself personally, and then your friends. So these resources I'm giving you, go ahead and look up at those. Luckily, this is also kind of caught on from a media perspective. So there's actually a lot more stories than there were, say, 10 years ago. And so there's some amazing documentaries to take a look at. One of them is called The Dark Side of Chocolate. So you can read about the Ivory Coast, and 90% of the chocolate that comes into the country is slave labor. You can look at Nefarious, which is they're hard films, so I'm going to preface that, all right? The subject matter that we're talking about sucks. And so, of course, the films are really difficult to watch.
You've told me about a few of these, and I've watched, and they are tough to watch. Steve, I mean, you want to talk about your eyes being like, is this real? It's over the top. One
that I really like, that is a little bit more stomachable, if you will, is called The Price of Free. And it's an amazing documentary. Came out in 2018 by this guy named Kailash, who is Indian, and he has single-handedly rescued 80,000 slaves. 80,000 children, personally rescued through his organization. He won the Nobel Peace Prize, praise God, 2018. They came out with a documentary. So it shows you kind of some of the progress that is being made. And he was able in that country, the statistics are staggering. So we took a figure of like 270,000 at-risk children, and through his work, been able to drop that down into the 150s, somewhere around there. So there's a lot of good stuff being done. So that's one thing you can do, is educate yourself. The other thing you can do is just be conscious about purchasing. Everybody here is a consumer.
Yeah. And
so as a consumer, just if you don't, there's a lot of research to be done, of course, but just think very basically fair trade. Fair trade is
fair trade.
That's a stamp that people get, and in order to get it, they have to follow the line of production and say, hey, this isn't coming from slave labor. Okay, so chocolate's a big one, teas are a big one, coffee's a big one, jewelry's a big one. Where you get your clothes, that's a really big one. So Hanes, everybody shops for Hanes. So that's slave labor out of Mexico. Thank you very much, Target and Walmart.
So you see free trade, it's a stamp, but if I'm at the store and I'm looking at a product,
Yeah.
is there something on the product?
That'll
that
be
tells
on
me?
the tag that'll say fair trade.
What about
Fair
jockey? I mean, we're talking about underwear. What about jockey?
I actually haven't. That's a big one,
Hopefully jockey isn't, because I'm wearing jockey right now. That might be a little too much information, but
there is an app that Not For Sale put out a couple years ago where you can scan the barcode
Really?
and
That's
it'll rate
cool.
the product A, B,
That's
C,
nice.
D. So that's a Not For Sale product. So as a consumer, figure out what you're going to do. The other really, one of the gateways to this, guys, is pornography. And I think the three of us would probably say, oh, of course. But unfortunately, the conversations I have with people, that's where you get a lot of pushback. Like, there's no way that pornography leads to this. And in fact, I'd say much worse than that. The pornography is this. The folks who are doing a lot of these films are trafficked kids.
Really?
And in fact, you mentioned earlier,
they build it up to be, it's a self-replicating, right?
Absolutely.
Pornography itself leads into
it disintegrates
both customers and more trafficking.
Yeah, and it's like any drug, if you will.
Yeah.
You take a little hit, and then you need something else, and then you got to get into the more hardcore stuff. And you started with the picture, but now you need the real thing. One of the fastest growing sex trafficking crimes right now is cyber. So it's hard to ship you overseas, and it takes money, but it's really easy to put up a camera in a bedroom and get some 12-year-olds, doing this, that, or the other. So that's a huge issue in the Philippines. But luckily, like I mentioned, IJM is there, and so there's good people doing some good stuff. So one of the things you said, Steve, was about. I've lost my train of thought. You said something that I wanted to touch on, but I can't remember what it is.
Well, about the airport, the marketing.
No, it was something else. So I'll think of it in a minute. But so keep yourself informed. Buy fair trade. Pornography. There's a group called Fight the Drug, and it's about the psychological effects of pornography and where they lead to. So
is it fightthedrug.org?
Yeah.
Fightthedrug.org. Okay.
So and they have a lot of products. So if you're interested in supporting them, there's always people who are doing stuff that you can plug into. So if you want to go volunteer, if you want to get involved, there's tons of things you can do. But start out with kind of learning about what it is and who the players are and where you can go for your information. And that'll serve you pretty well.
This has been just terrific, right,
Yeah,
Steve?
This
is it the best? I'm going to say it's the best. I'm going out on a limb here. This is the best.
We'll go with that.
All right.
This is a great topic. For me, I'm going to be 50 soon, right? And this is all new,
Yeah.
right? How has this been hidden?
How has it been hidden? You're
And
right.
so if I'm having this, and I feel like I, pay attention, I read up on things that are happening, I know what's going on politically and all that's going around the world. But this is not something that you hear about, read about. You have to dig for it.
Yeah.
I remember what it was. You mentioned prostitution, and you said, so this isn't prostitutes who are willing, this is no prostitutes are willing. So if we go to Oakland, California, huge prostitute problem. And what they were the police there, this was 8 years ago, were arresting the prostitutes because it's illegal to prostitute yourself. But they're victims. These aren't people these are people who've been taken out of their home at 13. They've been seasoned for 4 or 5 years and put out on the street by a pimp. And then you say, well, that person's now willing. They're not willing. They've been badgered into
They're
this.
a sex worker.
We haven't rescued that I have seen in the group that I've been part of. We haven't rescued a prostitute yet that was willing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Not even the Vegas.
There's 5 legal brothels in Vegas, and we haven't rescued anybody from there who said they wanted to do it.
This is just we could go on all night.
Okay.
The light we're starting to lose some of this light here. We do have to cut it down. We're going to toast just because you're here. We're certainly not going to toast to
The topic.
the depravity of the topic, but let's toast to what we could do about it. Because some of you out there may be learning about this right now for the first time, and this is something that we all got to wake up to. There's so many things today we got to wake up to, but this one, this has to be top on the way up there on the list, right?
Yeah, this is this is pretty important stuff. So we are going to wrap up. So I want to challenge the audience, right? So if you're like me and kind of awed at this, at more of the wonder of how huge this is and how prolific it is, throw a comment down there. Throw us a wow, oh my gosh, whatever you want to comment. 1 word, 2 words.
If you know something, comment that.
Yeah, and do us a big favor. This is one that I think we need to share.
Yeah. This needs to get out there.
We can post some of this information in the
comments.
So we'll put that there for you. So
We'll
take
put
a
it
look.
down in so some of the links, you'll give us those links and we'll put those down there.
So but thank you for watching. This is a very important one. Help us get it out. Certainly subscribe, because I'm just thinking of how we can keep this going.
I was going to say, Steve, and let us know if this is something you want to hear more of. I mean, we talk about, personal development, which is fantastic stuff. But let's face it, this one goes right to the heart. This one goes to what can I do about it, which is also motivating, right?
Right.
So if you want to hear more like this, we know more people like Jonathan on other topics, and we can do that as well. You let us know, though, because if you don't let us know, you're just going to keep on hearing us talk on the couch.
Thank you, Jonathan, for coming and being a guest on our show.
Wow.
Appreciate it.
Really,
My pleasure.
Something.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.